everyone. Today the topic we are going to learn about is files from computer programming course with a course code 6900. Okay, so introduction. What are files? Files are basically storage mechanism that is used in programming. Storage mechanism. Until now we have been seeing the way we have we can use different directives in programming. For example, the usage of loops, arrays, strings, and many different things. Basically they were just syntax related things. However, in real world we have to deal with data, and when we deal with data we have to process it, and then after the processing we have to get some information and store that information somewhere. Store that information also. So for storing that particular information, or for storing that information in C++ and in other languages as well, we deal with either files and then later databases. Obviously here we have to clear that the files are also included in the database. Files make up our database, but here we are going to see rather simple files. We are not going to touch our database, but in later advanced subjects we are going to learn how to manipulate these files within our database. Okay, so let's get started. A file refers to a source in which a program stores the information data in the form of bytes of sequence on a string or on the disk permanently. So if you want to keep your processing and keep the end result of your processing and store it on the disk, then you have to use files. Until now we have taken the input. For example, we had age of a particular person, and we took the age of that person and stored it and displayed it and worked on it and then displayed something. However, when we closed the compiler, then this age and the processing related to this age was lost. So we are trying to preserve that. We are trying to preserve the processing on the age. Right. Okay. So by preserving, I mean storing or saving. The content available on the file isn't volatile like the compiler memory in C++. So what does that mean? It means that being volatile means changing, and in this context, changing from having a value to having no value, having value to no value. So if you do not store the value of a particular person and his age in a file, then when you close the compiler or even you close the IDE, then what happens is that there is no value that is stored on your compiler. So such program can perform various, and in that particular case all of the operations that you have performed are lost. So we have to understand, we have to know how to save the processing and the files and the data related to a particular program that we have run. Okay, so what does it say? The program can perform operations such as creating, opening, reading a file, and even manipulating the data present within the file. So it is just describing all of the functions that we can use within a file. We can create them, we can open them, read them, manipulate. What does manipulation mean? Manipulation means accessing, editing, changing, deleting, removing, and also changing the values. This process is known as file handling in C++. So all of these steps are known as file handling. So let's just read it. When a program is terminated, the entire data is lost, so it is repetition. If you close the compiler, no data is stored. If you have to enter a large number of data, it will take a lot of time to read them out. For example, you had 100 values for a subject of 100 students. You wrote a program and it takes the input values from 100 students. However, when you will close the compiler, all of these values will be lost, and you will have to take these values again and again. So we want to store these values, so whatever functionality we want to apply on these values, we can apply that. So by using files we can do so. However, if you have file containing all the data, you can easily access the content with a few commands in C++. So that is what it is saying. If you have stored it using files, then you can just read it via file processing. So just explaining the benefits of using files. You can easily move your data from one computer to another without any changes. So that is also very important, because when you write your code in compiler and you close the compiler, or it is saved on your local computer, you cannot change, or you cannot transfer the processing from your computer to another computer unless you save it in a file. So by saving it in a file, we can also move from one computer to another computer. Okay. So we have reusability. We have discussed all of these points again and again. So I will just go over them briefly. Reusability, saving time, commendable storage capacity, and portability. Portability means moving from one computer to another. Saving times is efficiency by not having to read the input again and again. We are saving times. Reusability, once stored, you can use it 100 times or as many times you want. Commendable storage capacity. The storage capacity of associated with compiler is small. However, your hard disks even times have TBs of data or even more than that. Okay, so in which way we can store data? We can store data in C++ in two ways: text files .txt, which can be opened in Notepad or binary files. So we will go over both of these one by one. So text file are normally .txt with the extension txt, and you can easily create and open them in small notepads like editors. So when you open these files, you see all the content within the file as plain text. So if you have written your contents to a text file, you can open it and then edit it even using your simple keyboard. You do not have to use a compiler for editing your data in the notepad file. However, because we are saving input from the compiler, then we will use text file. They take minimum effort to maintain, are easily readable, and provide the least security and takes bigger storage space. So they have some pros and some cons. What are the pros? Minimum effort, just have to write a couple of sentences, a couple of statements in C++, and you can store your data within text files. They are easily readable. What does that mean? It means that you can read it without including a lot of header files or without writing a complex series of commands. They are less secure because a notepad itself is very less secure or least secure software. So any file that can be opened in it can also be used for malicious purposes. Anyway, and it takes a lot of storage space. If you have just few names or few variables, then the storage space taken by the text file is not big. However, if you have thousands of records, then that storage space becomes huge quite exponentially. Exponentially means with a factor of n. So it increases by a lot of factors. So binary files are also similar files to .txt files. However, in the case of computers, the binary files usually deal with only zeros and ones. So if you convert your data into zeros and one and then save it on the compiler, then it will save in the form of .bin files. They are, instead of storing data in plain text, they are used to store data for 0 and 1 type format. They can hold a higher amount of data, are not easily readable, and provide better security than text files. So they have the advantage of storing a larger amount of data using smaller space. They cannot be easily read by a malicious user, and they provide better security than text files because they cannot be opened and easily readable in normal simple text editors. You have to know how to deal with the registry files, and also you have to install special softwares for manipulating .bin files. That both of these factors increase the security that is associated with binary files. Okay, so header file for files, just as we saw the header files for output and input manipulation within the last lecture, we have to see the header files which are needed for inputting and outputting and working of files. So the basic code or the basic header file that you have to include is fstream. It is file stream. Okay, so it is file streaming. Streaming usually means movement of water. However, in this case, we are talking about movement of data or files. Okay, so fstream means movement of data, movement of files. So we have within the fstream header file, we have three classes: offstream, ifstream, and fstream. Offstream is used for actually it is not offstream, it is O and F and then stream. It is output file stream. Similarly, some of you might have guessed it that if stream would be input file stream, and fstream that is used for both of them. So you can use offstream for writing files, ifstream for reading files, and fstream for both of these writing and reading purposes. So file operations. What are some of the common file operations which can be used on files? The first one is creating a new file. The second one is opening an existing file and editing it. The third one is closing a file, and then the fourth one is reading and writing information to a file. So we will go over writing and writing to a file. When we write a file, we also go over opening and creating the file. So both of those other operations will be included in this. So we are including IOStream header file, and we are also including fstream header file, IOStream for input and output, fstream for manipulation of files, and namespace for standard input output. And then we come in the main function within the program, and then we have this particular syntax. We are telling the compiler that we want object of offstream object. So offstream object is used for outputting values to a file. So what do we do? We are adding files, adding values to example.txt. Whatever we want to write, we have to use out file, the same name as the variable name. Out file, we write it in the file, hello file, and this is the test. These are both sentences that we want to write into the file, and then we write into the file, and then we close it by using the out file dot close function. Okay. So if you want to read from a file, how do we do it? We similarly, in the case of outputting, writing to a file, in the case of reading from a file, we have to include the relevant header files, IOStream and fstream, and then we are also including string, because we are going to write sentences and we are going to manipulate with sentences. So it is more useful to include string. And then the standard input output library, and here we are going to read from that particular file ifstream, that is the name of the input stream class, and then the object of that particular class, and the file that we want to read from, example.txt. And we have declared another string, because whatever we read from example.txt, we want to save it into the line. So here, while get line in file and line. What does that mean? It means read file from in file and store it in a line. So, and it is also checking whether there are lines present in the file. It is also checking that. It is not only reading but also checking, because if it is reading and it is not checking, then what will it read? It has to know whether there are sentences in the file to be read. So it will try to read the files and also check whether there are some sentences or something written in the file as well. So it is checking when the condition is true, then it will keep on displaying the lines. However, when the condition becomes false, whenever the condition of the while loop becomes false, we have gone over it, that whenever the condition of while loop becomes false, we come out of the loop. So we come out of the loop. That's it. And then we are just closing the file. Okay. So here is another example of writing to a file. We are just using offstream and an object fout, and then we are using the file name.txt, and then we are writing John Doe. John Doe is a name that is used for those people in English language whose name you do not know. So it is just a template name. You may also write your own name like Ali or Akbar or Babar or whatever. And then we are just closing that particular file. Okay. So here, if you want to read a particular thing from a file, so how can we do that? We can open the file, and then we search for that particular value in the file by using the getLine and the fn, all of these commands. And then if the name has been read from the file, it will just display it. And suppose there was a name var stored in the file, it will read that var name and then display it on the screen. And then lastly, we are just closing the file again. Okay. So we have to go over the common functions which are associated with the opening and inputting of files. So I'm just going to explain them one by one. So here, common file operations. What are the common file operations? You can create and write two files. So how do you create? By initializing output fstream and then fout a variable, and then the name of the file itself. So in this program we have written a file.txt. You may give the file any name. You may even write any file name .txt. Okay, if you have to read it from the file, then you use if stream object, if stream fin, and then file name. If you have to read line, there is reading from a line, reading from a file, and then reading line. So if you want to read line, complete line, then you use get line, just as you used get line from getting a line from the user. So you will use the same function but treating the file as your user now. Okay, so if you want to read just one word from the file, then we use fin. Similarly, if you want to write to a file, we just use fout, which we have been seeing up until now. Okay, so if you want to now all of these functions were used by using their relevant class files. However, because we have discussed that we can use fstream also for both of these purposes, so if you want to use fstream, then we will write the syntax fstream file.txt, and then we will tell that compiler for what purpose we are using in. So if we want to use it for out, we will have to use write out over there, and then if we want to close the file, we will just use this syntax fout.close or fin.close. If we were using if we were inputting values from a file, then we will use fin, and if we were writing to a file, we will use out. Okay, so that's it for the files in a topic in C6900 and for your computer programming course. I hope that you were able to understand all of these topics. I thank you for attending the lectures and taking the units. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.